Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Janaea Talks Caps podcast. We've got lots of extra coverage coming up now in the next weeks and hopefully months of the Caps 2019 playoff run. We can officially say that now without jinxing it, as they've officially clinched a playoff spot just a little bit over a week ago. They were the first team in the Metropolitan Division to clinch a spot, topping 100 points for the fifth straight season. And by the way, they're just the 10th team in over 100 years of NHL history to put together 5 straight 100-plus point seasons. An incredible run of consistent dominance over their peers. So cheers to the core of this team especially, who've been here for that entire run. You guys are amazing, and we are so beyond spoiled as fans. And on that same note, the Caps have also clinched the Metropolitan Division crown, which means they've won the division for the 4th straight year. The Caps also won 4 straight division titles from 2007 to 2011. The common thread, obviously, being that all of this dominance has come during the Alex Ovechkin and Nicklas Backstrom era. And so this year's division crown has made the Caps just the second team in NHL history to win their division 4 straight times on more than one occasion. Again, 2007 to 2011, and again now, obviously going through 2019. We don't know, they might win it again next year for a 5th straight year. Hopefully that's the case, but for now, consistently dominant throughout the entire Ovechkin and Backstrom era. The only other team to accomplish that, winning the division in 4 straight years on multiple occasions, that would be Original Six franchise, the Boston Bruins, who obviously had a 48-year head start on the Capitals. 48 years is a lot of time for a head start, so the Caps obviously have done extremely well to be only the second team in NHL history to be able to claim that they have done that. So anyways, it was cute how the Islanders thought that they were going to win the division for a while there, wasn't it? It was never in doubt, boys and girls and babes, never in doubt. And so now, as we get ready for the playoffs, we still don't yet know for sure who the Caps are going to be playing against in the first round. There's a lot of pucks in the air right now. There's still some things to be decided over these last couple of days of the regular season. But we can narrow it down to a short list. I've got the Rangers and Blue Jackets game on in the background here as I'm recording this. So, we can narrow it down to a short list, as there's a handful of teams who the Caps could potentially be facing off against come April 10th when the Stanley Cup playoffs begin. And that short list includes, for now, again, it's at least at the time of the recording of this podcast, which I remind everyone, even though I do record and release it almost instantly, always pretty much within 24 hours, these standings are changing almost by the minute. But as of now, that short list includes the Carolina Hurricanes, the Columbus Blue Jackets, the Montreal Canadiens, we took care of that one with our win last night, and the Pittsburgh Penguins are on the short list as well for the teams that the Caps could be possibly facing off against in the first round. There's 3 of them as of right now. So the Habs, obviously, they've been crossed off that list. They could still make the playoffs, but the best they could do would be the last wild card spot. So if they do get in, they will be facing the Tampa Bay Lightning in the first round. And the Habs, they're on life support now after being beaten by the Caps last night. And yeah, like I said, it's now impossible for them to jump high enough in the standings that they would be facing the Caps in round 1. So if they get in, which they won't, they would be facing off against Tampa Bay in the first round. Although at the moment, the Rangers, just to give you guys an update, the Rangers right now are up 1-0 currently on the Columbus Blue Jackets. It's at the end of the second period. It's in the second intermission right now. So if the Blue Jackets do drop this game, then Montreal obviously needs to beat the Toronto Maple Leafs tomorrow night. That's Saturday night at the Bell Center in Montreal. They would also need the Columbus Blue Jackets to go to Ottawa and lose tomorrow as well. So a lot has to go right for the Habs to get into the playoffs at the moment after they lost to the Caps last night at Capital One Arena. So I think the Caps match up fairly well against all of these teams, and frankly, given the Capitals' generational dominance over the Boston Bruins, combined with how the Caps have shown that they can pretty much beat the shit out of the Tampa Bay Lightning anytime they feel like it, I'm inclined personally to not be afraid of anyone in these playoffs, but maybe that's just my defending champ cockiness talking, although I don't like to call it cockiness because I can back it up with numbers, so that is called confidence, which is based on facts. However, we all know that anything can happen in the playoffs. Anything usually does happen in the playoffs, and so we have to be ready for anything. I would say that the most important thing right now is definitely to try and stay as healthy as possible at all costs, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, things are looking good for the Caps as they head into the playoffs. By the way, seriously, how sweet was that can of whoop-ass the Caps opened up on the Lightning in Tampa Bay? My God. And I guess Erik Cernak must have heard my last podcast because he finally grabbed the blank space where his nuts are supposed to be, and he dropped his gloves and fought Wilson, finally. Which was obviously a terrible idea by Cernak, just as it is a terrible idea by anyone who attempts it. Wilson, of course, got the KO with a heavy right cross to Chernak's head. Was the cherry on top of what was already an ass-kicking being laid on the Bolts on the scoreboard, courtesy of your Washington Capitals. And that game against the Bolts, it was really just one part of the 14-4-1 run that the Caps have been on since trading for Carl Hagelin and Nick Jensen. The Caps by far had the toughest schedule of any team in the NHL in March. That's when you look at the quality of the opponents, i.e. the standings points percentage of the teams that you're facing off against. And yet, the Caps posted the best record in the entire league in the month of March. They've not just been dining out on the league's cellar dwellers, they've been beating up on the league's best. And this, of course, bodes well for the playoffs, where every team is a good team, and there are no Senators or Oilers or Sabres or Canucks around when you need a break. So yes, the Caps have been getting red hot at just the right time. Sound familiar? Is anyone else having a little bit of deja vu back to last season, perhaps? Yeah, me too. So, who should the Caps be hoping to face in round one? How do they match up against the three possible opponents? Like I said, I think they match up rather well against anyone, so if you're a Caps fan out there, I wouldn't be too afraid of anyone, but let's break down the possible opponents anyway, because that's what we do, and let's see where the Caps might be able to exploit each of them, or if there are any areas where a particular opponent could give the Caps some trouble. Let's start with the Carolina Hurricanes. For me, and I said it in an earlier podcast, I think of all of the potential first-round opponents for the Caps, I think the Hurricanes are the one that I would be the most leery about, although the Caps kind of proved me wrong on that one so far by going 4-0-0 against the Canes this season, sweeping the season series. But regular season brooms aside, the Canes have been a dominant team when you look at puck possession metrics, although they've been less dominant at actually converting that puck possession into actual goals scored. So they'll probably win some type of award over at the Russian Machine Never Breaks blog. But alas, here at Janaea Talks Caps, Corsi is not everything. You have to put the puck in the net to win games, and more importantly, to win playoff series. The Canes might have the upper hand on the Caps when it comes to puck possession, but the Caps are better at scoring actual, real goals. And besides, the Caps' puck possession is the most improved in the NHL since the trade deadline. They've been possessing the puck at a 55.9% clip since the trade deadline, and given that this is now our team, and it's the team that we're going into the playoffs with, whatever happened before the trade deadline doesn't really matter anymore. We saw a similar post-trade deadline mega improvement from the Caps last season, and we all know how that ended. So when you match up the post-trade deadline Caps against the post-trade deadline Canes, the puck possession metrics are pretty even, but again, the Caps are definitely better at scoring goals. This is obviously due to the surplus of offensive talent that the Capitals have over the Canes, and as well as over just about everyone in the league for that matter. And having some guy named Alex Ovechkin on your team doesn't hurt that matter either. So, advantage to the Caps. But where the Canes do scare me a little bit is in goal. You will remember that they have Peter Mrazek on their team now. His would not be a scary name to hear normally, but when you're a Caps fan, it is and it should be, because he always seems to put on the performance of a lifetime against the Caps, even if he is normally trash against every other team. You'll remember that he used to do it against us when he was a Detroit Red Wing. He once stopped 15 Alex Ovechkin shots in one game. That was when Ovechkin was trying to become the highest scoring Russian ever. You remember Sergei Fedorov was in the building in Detroit, and Ovechkin wanted to do it in front of Fedorov. And so he fired 15 shots on Peter Mrazek in that game. And we lost that game, by the way, 1-0. Mrazek with the 38 save shutout. The Caps and Ovechkin seem to have solved him a bit since then, but he's one of those goalies who is very, very, very inconsistent, hence the wildly up and down career numbers, but he's also capable of getting on an insane hot streak. I actually remember watching him in the World Junior Championships before he ever got to the NHL, and all of you American Caps fans out there should remember him from that time as well, assuming that you watch World Junior Hockey, because he got on one of those insane hot streaks, and he pretty much single-handedly had his Czech Republic team eliminate a much stronger United States squad from the tournament. So that would pretty much be my only real concern with playing against the Canes, is that there's a slim chance that we could see the reincarnation of Yaroslav Halak, circa the 2010 Stanley Cup playoffs. And nobody wearing a Caps jersey wants to see that ever again. So that, coupled with the Canes' strong puck possession, it could have the makings of an upset if Holtby happens to be off his game a little bit at the same time. So overall, a lot would have to go right for the Canes to win a series against the Caps, but it could happen. So probably for me, the Canes are the team that I would least want the Caps to face in the first round, at least of the three available options to the Caps. So again, I don't think that we have to be scared of anybody. I certainly don't think that we have to be scared of the Carolina Hurricanes, but anything can happen during the playoffs. So next up, we have the Columbus Blue Jackets. Yes, the ever overly cocky winners of exactly 0 playoff series in their franchise's history. The same guys who thought, mistakenly, that they had the Division 1 back in January when they escaped by the skin of their teeth with a win over the Caps. I repeat again, in January. And they celebrated as if they'd just won the Stanley Cup. So the only problem with that is that now they are fighting for their playoff lives. They're in a dogfight with Montreal for the last playoff spot in the Eastern Conference. Those Blue Jackets, honestly, I cannot for the life of me understand what the hell they did at this year's NHL trade deadline. It's my opinion that they basically committed franchise suicide, because even with those trades, they are not good enough to win this year. And by trading away so many future assets for a bunch of pending unrestricted free agents who don't even want to stay in Columbus, by the way, they have basically guaranteed that they will suck for many, many, many years to come. But hey, that's none of my business, and I'm still going to laugh about it, though, because it is damn funny. Basically, up and down the lineup, the Jackets just are not as good as the Capitals. I said the same thing before last year's playoff series between the two teams. It was true then, and it's true now. You'll remember that the Jackets squeaked out 2 overtime wins in the first 2 games of that series before the Caps took over from there and won 4 straight to win the series in 6 games. Sergei Bobrovsky is primed to endure his annual playoff meltdown, while Braden Holtby has been rounding into pristine form in March and April, and oh yeah, he has the experience of winning the Cup last year. They have Cam Atkinson, who is not as good as Alex Ovechkin. They have Pierre-Luc Dubois, who is not as good as Evgeny Kuznetsov. They have Matt Duchene, who is not as good as Nicklas Backstrom. And there's the added bonus, of course, that Duchene is a total head case and should be rather easy to push off of his game in a 7-game playoff series. They have Josh Anderson, who is really just a Tom Wilson wannabe, but doesn't make you feel nearly as threatened. I could go on and on and on. And it's come to my attention that some Blue Jackets fans are actually claiming on Twitter that they have the best top 6 forward group in the entire National Hockey League. I'll just pause here, give you all a moment to laugh at that. And really, I just have to laugh as well because I actually don't know. I seriously, I don't understand how they can think that, say that. I mean, it's just, I don't even know. There are no words. I actually don't know whether to laugh because the notion is so funny or to cry because it's so sad that Jackets fans are that diluted. Anyways, oh well. The bottom line is that the Caps have a whopping 7 20-plus goal scorers on their team this season. That is the most in the league, and that's the best depth in the league. And if that doesn't excite you enough, then they've also got that Alex Ovechkin guy who himself counts as like 3 20-goal scorers. He's already whizzed by the 50-goal mark, and he is likely on his way to another Rocket Richard trophy as well. So for me, personally, I will take Ovechkin, Backstrom, Kuznetsov, Oshie, Vrana, and Wilson over anything that the Blue Jackets can scrape together to throw at me. I'm sorry if I'm not scared of Matt Duchene and Ryan Dzingel. Anyways, listen, for me, it's really hard to respect a team, respect players, respect a fan base who just are that cocky without ever having won anything. And I mean anything. Like, they've never won anything. Like, we thought that the Caps had never won anything because they hadn't won a Stanley Cup yet, right? But at least we won a playoff series pretty much every single year, you know? Like, Columbus, they've never won a single fucking thing, and they're that cocky. I just don't get it. Anyways, lastly, save the best for last, obviously, and by the best I mean the worst. Lastly, we have the Pittsburgh Penguins. That is option number 3 as to who the Caps might end up facing in the first round of the playoffs. Now, tell me honestly, okay? Would any fan of hockey in general, any hockey fan, would any hockey fan not want to see this matchup again? It never gets old, right? It's the greatest rivalry in all of professional sports right now. That has been well documented, and it just keeps getting better and better. As for how the Caps match up, I'd say pretty darn well. Both teams look very similar to the teams that faced off against one another in the second round last year, and we all know how that went. So I would say that the Caps' chances in a series against the Pens would be about the same as the Caps' chances in a series against the Pens last year, where, of course, they eliminated Pittsburgh in 6 games. The Caps know how to beat Matt Murray, high glove, high glove, high glove, high glove, and they know the way that they need to play in order to win against the Penguins. They need to play Capitals hockey, play a fast, up-tempo game where you move the puck quickly and effectively, and then finish it off with a handful of sprinkles and a giant helping of beating the shit out of the Penguins physically. Because that's really where the Caps have a huge advantage over the Pens, is that the Caps are a much, much more physical team than the Pens. The Caps are bigger and stronger, and they like to crush you on the forecheck, and that is what won them the series against the Pens last year. Pittsburgh just simply could not match Washington physically. It was cute and hilarious to watch them try, though. So both teams have great forward groups. Obviously, there's lots of talent up front for both teams. But the Caps can definitely expose the Penguins' defense. The Caps did it very well in that second-round series last year, particularly against the Pens' top defense pairing. And I use those two words, top and defense, very loosely. I'm talking about their top pairing of Chris Letang and Brian Dumoulin. Like I said, the two teams look very similar to the teams that faced off against one another last postseason, but there are a couple of areas where things have changed. And for the Penguins, it's that if it were even possible, they have actually managed to get even slower on defense this season. As first, they inexplicably signed Jack Johnson to a mega contract in the offseason. And then, and I will really try to suppress my giggles here, but then they traded for Erik Gudbranson, of all people, at this year's NHL trade deadline. Erik Gudbranson, probably the worst defenseman in the National Hockey League, and that's me being kind. But that's their solution to Tom Wilson, since clearly poor Jamie Alexiak was not getting the job done. Penguins fans shouldn't hold their breath on Gudbranson getting the job done either, and in fact, maybe one of my playoff predictions will be that Gudbranson wins the Conn Smythe Trophy for his role in helping the Capitals to repeat as champions. He is that bad. Trust me, I watched him for years in Vancouver. And where the Caps changed is that they actually made two good additions in terms of personnel, adding Carl Hagelin and Nick Jensen at this year's trade deadline. Carl Hagelin, who the Penguins tried to trade back for, allegedly, at the deadline, after having traded him away just months prior. Carl Hagelin, who the Penguins are now paying to play for the rival Capitals. That one has got to hurt. So the Caps got faster and the Pens got slower, and that's pretty much where we are. It feels almost inevitable that these two teams will meet one another again at some point in these playoffs. If not in the first round, then probably in the second round for the fourth time in as many years. And whoever comes out of this Eastern Conference is going to have a damn good chance at winning the Stanley Cup, because the Western Conference is a bit of a dumpster fire this season. The two teams that were projected to be the strongest teams in the conference, Nashville and Winnipeg, they've both they both have looked more like beer league teams for the better part of multiple months now. Like, we're talking like since New Year's Day. Nashville currently leads the Central Division with less than 100 points to their names, though. They are the only division leader who has less than 100 points, and just for a point of reference as well, the Montreal Canadiens, of course, they could end up missing the playoffs, despite having just 2 fewer standings points than Nashville. So the West is not the best this season, and the East is a beast. So should the Caps be the team that makes it out of the Eastern Conference, they should have a pretty damn good chance to repeat as Cup champs. Now, as we wrap up this episode, I just want to quickly go over the 3 things that I want to see from the Caps as they wrap up the regular season. Number 1, and this is the most important one, nobody get injured. We know already that Michael Kempny is out for the playoffs with a torn hamstring, which unfortunately required surgery as well. His recovery time has been placed at 4 to 6 months. So the trade that Brian McClellan made at this year's trade deadline to acquire Nick Jensen now looks extra important. It was a luxury to have him before. Now it is a necessity. So I would say that our strength on defense right now is pretty much exactly the same as it was at this time last year. We've added Jensen, but Kempny is injured. So the other 5 defensemen are all the same. And, of course, our defense would have been even stronger than it was during last year's Cup run had Kempny not been injured, as we'd then have both him and Jensen. But alas, we can't have everything. We're still in good shape, the same shape that we were in last year. But please, no one else get injured. Number 2, and this is necessary because of the injury to Kempny, is that we need to figure out over these next few days here, wrapping up the regular season, we need to figure out who is going to be playing alongside of John Carlson. To me, the best option in Kempny's absence is Christian Djoos. Carlson and Djoos have played together in the past. Djoos is a very good player. Djoos was there for all of that Stanley Cup championship run last year, and he played very well during it. Having Djoos on the top pairing would allow you to leave Brooks Orpik and Nick Jensen together, as I thought they've played really well together as well, ever since we acquired Jensen at the trade deadline. And most importantly, Djoos is a left-handed shot, so it allows you to leave your Norris Trophy caliber defenseman in John Carlson the hell alone on his natural right side of the ice. Carlson has never played the left side. To me, you would have to be crazy to take your absolute best defenseman, again, Norris Trophy caliber defenseman, and put him in a position where he is not going to be at his very best. Leave Carlson the hell alone and on his right side of the ice, please. I beg of you, Todd Reardon, I beg of you. The other option, of course, is to play Jensen with Carlson and possibly have Carlson playing on his offside. I don't like it. You have a course of action here where everyone is still playing on their natural sides, and Juice is more than capable of holding his own out there. So let's do it that way, please. Side note as well, as much as it sucks to lose Kempny, and it does suck, we're going to miss him a lot, but it is a plus to have Christian Juice back in the lineup. He brings a lot, and he adds certain dimensions that Kempny doesn't. Of course, that statement can also be reversed, where Kempny adds things that Juice doesn't as well. But as always, I'm choosing to look at the glass as being half full. So, moving on. Number 3, and this, by the way, has nothing to do with the playoffs, but please, number 3 is please, please, please wrap up that Rocket Richard Trophy for Ovi. It would be his 8th time leading the entire National Hockey League in goals, and he would be the first player ever to do that 8 times. He's already got his 8th 50-goal season. Let's make sure that we get him his 8th Rocket Richard Trophy as well. Lucky number 8. Okay, boys and girls and babes, we've got one more thankfully completely meaningless regular season game against the New York Islanders, and then the real fun begins. Like I said up at the top of the show, we are going to have a ton of awesome extra coverage coming up during these playoffs, so make sure you tune in like always. Tell your friends, share our podcast around if you don't mind, tell all of your Capitals loving buddies to subscribe, and let's all enjoy this ride together as we try to go back to back. It's going to be a good one. The next time I talk to you all, we will be in playoff mode, so get ready, babes. Fire up the tequila and the Xanax, lock and load. And let's go Caps!